historic city of London. Visit www.commonwealthafrica.com for more information to register.
Keywrite, specializing in all aspects of property lettings and management. If you have a property tenanted or empty, contact Keywrite on 0208 808 5789, where you'll be sure of expertise, competitive pricing and first-class service. Visit www.keywrite.co.uk. Telephone 0208 808 5789. Keywrite, the right key for your property investment.
Welcome back. This is a very special program dedicated from Ben Television to revealing to our viewers across UK, Europe, and indeed Africa, with specific reference to Nigeria. The case of money laundering involving former governor of Delta State, James Ibori, his solicitor, Bradford Gohish, who were both convicted at some point. However, in the course of time, revelations that we have been talking about came out. There has been corruption, dishonesty, and of course actions that are not compatible with elements of fair trial and justice on the part of both the prosecutors and the investigating police officer. Still in the studio with me is the QC, the Queen's Counsel, who has been on the lead defense counsel to Brother Gohill, and who has succeeded in uncovering many of these revelations. Stephen, thank you for your time one more time. Let me ask you, before we went on that break, I was asking you, my viewers will say, well, it doesn't really matter. James pleaded guilty to money laundering. But you just said people can plead guilty from your experience based on several circumstances, advice from their solicitor, barrister, and of course social and other circumstances around them. Would that also be the case? Well, actually, or why would Gohill also?
Right, so Badrish Gohill's plea of guilty was very much out of the ordinary. So he'd had the trial of money laundering, a long trial, and he was convicted.
The jury first convicted him.
The jury with the DFID employee as the foreman of the jury, yes. And he then had to face a second trial.
And that probably broke him down.
Well,
who would that be first?
He was very much a broken man at that point. You know, to go through a long trial, he'd been a solicitor and now he was convicted. He had to now face a second trial very shortly after the first one.
Can I ask you, did he not know at that point that the jury foreman was an employee, a senior employee of David?
Yes.
He didn't know?
He did know that because it came out. But the parties in the first trial with the DFID person as foreman did not submit to the judge, his own lawyer did not submit to the judge that that person should not serve on the jury.
Could that form a basis for an appeal at some point?
It did, and the Court of Appeal said no, that's not a good enough point for appeal.
Okay, let's go on. Why he pleaded guilty? Let's go on.
So after the first trial, he faced a second trial, and he received advice from his then QC that he should plead guilty. And even though he had maintained, and still maintains, that he was not guilty. And his plea of guilty, I have seen documents, was not a true plea of guilty because he was maintaining to his own lawyers that he wasn't guilty. Excuse me. And I've seen a document from his own QC at the time in which the QC accepts that Badrish Gohill did not say he was guilty. He was maintaining his innocence. So he was persuaded to plead guilty on a promise of a shorter sentence and for a number of other reasons. but I can categorically state that Bajrus Gohil has not admitted to any of his lawyers that he was guilty. And as a result of his plea of guilty, other prospective defendants, including James Ibori, also pleaded guilty because it was a domino effect. And so Bajrus Guilty's plea, which I'm going to suggest in due course to the Court of Appeal, was not a real plea of guilty, caused others to plead guilty. Because the fact of his pleading guilty became evidence against the others. You understand? It's in most countries, if somebody pleads guilty to an offence, that fact of the plea of guilty means the offence took place.
Yeah.
So then it put others in a difficult position. So they all caved in, as it were. So that's why his plea of guilty is not really what it seems.
Okay. One of the other people involved in this matter who also pleaded guilty following Gohil's plea of guilty was Lambertus Deborah, who is involved in the V-Mobile case in which James Ibori pleaded guilty, was charged for. And joining us now via Skype is Deborah, all the way from Barcelona, to also shed some light to this issue of James Ibori's case, and of course, Gohil. Deborah, thank you for joining us on the program today. Good evening. Good evening, Deborah. Hello, can you hear me? Good evening, Deborah. Are you there? Okay, we're trying to establish contact with Lambertus Deborah, who was involved in the V-Mobile case at that time. Oh, yes, he's here now. Deborah, thank you for joining us on the program. Good evening. We're just trying to establish some audio contact. We can't see you. Can you hear me? Okay, I think we need to, while we're trying to establish that contact, let me get back to Stephen in the studio here. We'll be able to bring to you as soon as we're able to do that, Deborah. Deborah was one of the people who pleaded guilty. In the course of James Ibori's case, one of the issues, money laundering case that was brought against him was V-Mobile. Huge sum of amount of money. And the man that was at the... Oh, okay. I think we've been able to...
You should hear me now.
Fantastic. We can hear you, Deborah. Thank you so much. How are you today? Let's start from there.
I'm in good shape.
All right. You are joining us from Barcelona today.
Yes, I live here in Barcelona.
Okay, let's take your case this way. You also pleaded one of the charges brought against James Ibori in his money laundering case in London, UK here, was the case of V-Mobile. Huge amount of money. Do you want to give us some quick information around that V-Mobile transaction for which James Ibori pleaded guilty and he faced conviction?
Well, the V-Mobile was a long-running hostile situation whereby several different interested parties were looking to get involved, and we were engaged by two of the more important shareholders, Ecom State and Delta State, to provide both advice and possible acquisition candidates for their particular shares. We actually, myself and Danny McCann organized the arranger agreements back in early November 2005, where we negotiated the terms of the agreements and the types of work that we were going to do, and the compensation arrangements. And it was all built around a success fee arrangement, built around a minimum price that we were going to achieve. And if we hadn't achieved that for the clients, we wouldn't have been paid at all.
V-Mobile, was it a James Ibori's idea, or how did this involve James Ibori? You want to give us some information or background
Oh,
information?
no, it wasn't. The company needed financing. I mean, for about 3 years, it had been starved of capital, and it was losing market position as a result of that. And that basically evolved or devolved from this fight at the boardroom level with Econet Wireless International, Strive Maziiwa, who had been an original shareholder back in 2002, who was stripped of his ownership in 2003 because he didn't deliver the funding that he was supposed to do.
Okay.
And that was the genesis, really. When he didn't deliver, that's when Aqua Ibom State and Delta State and possibly Lagos State got involved to provide the critical funding that the company needed. But nonetheless, for that period of time, it was always short of capital and losing market position. It was losing position to Glow Mobile, which was another company in the same sector. The top company was MTN.
So at that point, Aqua Ibom, Delta, and probably Lagos State decided to come in and provide some financial support to get it going.
On the earlier days, and then we got involved after discussions both with Aqua Ibom and Delta State, and we actually did have discussions with Lagos State to represent them as well.
Did the transaction go well with Delta State? Were you able to get Delta State on board?
From about the September, October 2005 through the second quarter of 2006, had a very critical role in the evolution of the transaction. We had several discussions with Econet Wireless International, who was a putative acquirer of V-Mobile, and we actually had discussions with them. And I don't know for what reason Strive Maziiwa didn't follow through on what we had brought to him, whether it was for a lack of funds on his part, or whether he had a larger motive in driving the underlying company, V-Mobile, into bankruptcy, which would have happened if the Celtel deal hadn't transpired.
So James Ibori pleaded guilty to the V-Mobile transaction. How did this actually get to James Ibori? For the life of me, I never understood that. Mr. Ibori wasn't involved in the transaction. Sorry, say that again? Did you say James Ibori was not involved in the V-Mobile transaction?
He was not involved in the transaction as it evolved. He was involved in giving consent to our arranger agreement that I had negotiated with one of his representatives, as I had negotiated with the representatives of Aqua Ibom State and their industry promotion agency, Akipoc. And so when he gave consent to that, after that, he had no involvement whatever.
So let's establish this case very well here. We had Aqua Ibom State give consent, Delta gave consent. Along the line, sitting on top of Delta State was James Ibori, convicted, prosecuted, and convicted over that, but Aqua Ibom was never. How? Would you want to explain to me what really happened there? If
well, I don't understand it either.
You didn't understand either.
You know, for the life of me, I mean, I didn't understand Mr. Gohill's position. And when Mr. Gohill pled guilty, my barrister just threw me under the bus. Then it became, when he pled guilty, it became criminal proceeds, the fees that we earned, and of course, myself and Mr. McCann had handled them. And so it was plain simple for the barrister. I mean, they just felt that I had money laundered. So which wasn't the case in my mind ever.
Let me further establish the other parties involved in the V-Mobile transaction business or arrangement. Do you by any means know if other parties probably included CDC?
You know, I wasn't aware that the CDC had an involvement until more recently. The CDC, as I now know, was the second largest shareholder of Celtel, the ultimate winning bidder. And I didn't know that at the time. And there were other aspects where CDC had been involved. CDC had invested a lot of money with a